All right, I think we will go ahead and get started. My name is David Gottfried. I'm the Deputy Director of the NNCI Coordinating Office. Welcome to another edition of the NNCI webinar series, this time featuring the innovation and entrepreneurship activities. And before I hand it off to our moderator today, Matt Hull, just a word about the next webinar. We will actually be meeting again in 3 weeks from today on May 24th, when it will be a webinar in the societal and ethical implications activities. And it will feature a panel of graduate students who are now working in, or former graduate students who are now working in state government, and describing their activities and priorities. And with that, just if you have questions during the webinar, please enter them in the Q&A and we'll address those at the end. And with that, I will hand it off to Matt.
Thanks, David. It's my pleasure to bring this innovation and entrepreneurship seminar to you folks today. We chose this topic based on an experience that many of us from the NNCI had at the January Nano for Earth meeting hosted by the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. And during that meeting, we learned a little bit about these Activate Fellows who are scientists and engineers, just like many of the folks within the NNCI who are doing some really amazing things, translating their research to market. And one of our NNCI members in particular, Shireen Obear, at the Joint School of Nanoscience, which is part of CNIC, suggested we invite the folks from Activate to come and share more with us about the fellowships that they offer, and just to give us a sense of what it takes for to be a part of that type of program and learn more about it and how we can get involved. And so our panelists today, we are missing one today. Jill Fuss is unable to join us, but we do have Karin Lyon, Chief Growth Officer at Activate, Hannah Murnen, Managing Director at Activate Anywhere, and Austin Hickman, who's CEO of Soctera and an Activate Fellow. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Karin, and she's going to share a little bit of information with us. And then from there, she'll hand it off to Hannah, and then on to Austin, and we'll wrap up with some questions, both scripted and then also some from the audience. So with that, Karin, are you ready to take off?
Indeed, yes.
All right, great.
Matt, thanks so much, David, as well. I was so excited when Matt reached out because we want to support as many scientists, entrepreneurs around the country as possible. And so we're an 8-year-old program, but I think we want to get our name out there more because we have a really unique program that really supports you at the earliest stages to try to commercialize your research and technology. And we want as many people to know about it, as many people applying, because it's so important that this issue and in the innovation ecosystem is addressed, how to really support game-changing, brilliant scientists like yourselves, and how do we support you to take that to market. So I won't really go into my background because it's not as exciting as Hannah's and Austin's, just that I've been at Activate for a couple of years now. I have an MBA, so that's sort of where I come in to be able to help support on the business side of things. But really, most of our organization, we are scientists who are helping other scientists. And so really understand the struggles, both technical and also business side, to get you to market. So I'll share my screen because I want to share a few slides to give a little background about who we are, why we exist, and how we can potentially work with some of you going forward. So at the end of the day, we really believe in the power of science and the power of scientists, and that it's so critical now more than ever to use science to address a lot of the global challenges that are facing us today. Activate as a nonprofit has really focused on climate as a broadly defined to focus our energy, but really we think about all of the different ways that hard science in particular can support and address a lot of the challenges facing us today. And the thing that is most crucial is that it's really about the scientists themselves, because you are the ones who are the change makers and are really going to be the ones to address these issues and pivot your technologies and understand the market. So at the end of the day, we are here to empower scientists to reinvent the world by bringing their research to market. That's really why we exist. And we exist at the earliest stages because, as many of you might be aware, to become an entrepreneur, there are multiple what they call valleys of death in trying to get your research to market. And so we want to be at the very earliest stages, that first valley of death. How do you understand and to transition your research from the lab? So as I was speaking about, we really exist to support our fellows. So our program as an entrepreneurial fellowship does not charge fees or equity for a fellow to participate. This is a different model than a lot of incubators and accelerators that are out there. And it's why we call ourselves an entrepreneurial fellowship as opposed to one of those other terms. And we are here to support fellows who make things. So this is our emphasis on the hard science, deep tech, physical sciences side of things. No offense to software, very successful software entrepreneurs out there. We believe, though, that we can be most impactful for those who are on the hard science, that we think a lot of the challenges and risks that are associated with that, time-wise, financial, just even technical risk, those are the areas where we can most help address. And we believe these scientists who make things are making them for a purpose. That's really where our mission orientation comes in. So what do we mean by, this fellowship, the Activate Transformation? It's really about this 0 to 1 journey. And the 0 part is really you're coming out of your lab, you have research, science that you aren't necessarily sure. There's a proof of concept, but understanding the mechanics of it and how do you actually think about commercializing that is the stickler. And so at this 0 piece, you start the fellowship. We allow over these 2 years, explore, pivot, set your roadmap, attract follow-on funding. So a big part of why we exist is to accelerate this path of entrepreneurship, and accelerating by getting that funding, accelerating by identifying your market, pivoting if you need to, really helping to speed up that entrepreneurial process, which for hard science can take 7 to 10 years to get to market, and validating that first product, importantly. We began with a partnership with the U.S. National Lab. So as a fellowship program, we understood the importance of providing support, financial mentoring, entrepreneurial education, all of those things. But importantly, especially for the scientists and engineers we're supporting, it's that continued technical development that is very crucial at this early stage. And so partnering with universities, research institutions, et cetera, just like those in the NNCI group, is really critical to helping those fellows both develop on the technical side as well as on the entrepreneurial business side. And so Lawrence Berkeley Lab is where we actually began with our Activate Berkeley program, and I'll share more about that later. So what is this fellowship? What exactly happens in these 2 years? We believe it's super important. On the time and funding piece, that's one crucial element. So the time of the 2 years it's longer than a lot of the incubator accelerator programs out there, and it's for a reason. It takes a long time to understand and develop across the technical, financial, team, leadership, market milestones that you set for yourselves at the beginning of the fellowship. Importantly, though, the funding is important too. So when we think about funding, it's really providing a living stipend for our fellows to be able to devote full time to this fellowship and building their company. We provide a $100K R&D grant to continue that technical development, and access to at least $100K in additional flexible capital at, again, this early stage to help deploy that cash in crucial areas that are essential as an early founder. Expert community is also a key component of the program. It takes a village, right? And so who are those folks you surround yourself with to enable you to be that entrepreneur and to develop your technology and your business? It's the academics, it's the corporates, it's lawyers, other entrepreneur founders, other mentors. And so we really have curated a very aligned and very passionate about helping founders community that will be there along your journey. The world-class tools for scientists, this is where the partnerships with research institutions is key, because this is where fellows can continue to develop their technologies and really focus on how to empower them with their own intellectual property too. That's a very key part of what we want to try to provide. And then of course, the entrepreneurial education every week for the 2 years or so, you will have exposure to entrepreneurial curriculum, whether that's hearing from another founder or having, the basics of 101 customer discovery and trying to understand that. So a real deep and wide variety of curriculum. And we believe it works. So 8 years, we've had 142 fellows come through our doors, building 106 science-based companies. We're about to bring on cohort 2023 in the next month. That's 40 more companies, 48 more innovators. So it'll be an almost 200 person community of fellows who've gone through the same things that you are going through to really be that support. These amazing folks have collectively raised almost 1.3 billion. And so that's during the program and after. Importantly, during the program, when I talked about that acceleration of certain milestones, we've seen our fellows raise almost 6 million on average while in the program. And I think the revenue outcome is also important because, again, we're at the really earliest stages for a lot of these companies, and it often takes 7 to 10 years to get to that product and get to that proof in the market. And a lot of our fellows are already earning revenue. So very exciting. I have a few slides on the different just examples of some of the fellows. I can share this with Matt later, and maybe he can share with the folks so you can see some of the examples of our fellows. Really just super diverse across many industries, but all in the hard tech space. And then here's a bit of our footprint. We started in Berkeley in 2015, expanded to Boston, and then New York. We're opening another program in Houston next year. But importantly, and why Hannah and Austin are here is because the Activate Anywhere is an experiment of ours, but I think one that's really panning out. And she'll be able to share, they'll both will be able to share a little bit more about it, but it's essentially, COVID showed us that we don't necessarily need to have a place-based program, and we could provide some of the same services, the same program, the same support to entrepreneurs across the country, no matter where they're based. And so we're looking to even grow beyond these 5 communities and would love to engage with those of you who are interested in joining. So this is our national ecosystem. Would love to add NNCI to this list. And just a visual of some of the companies that we've been supporting over these 8 years. And yeah, just the diversity of all of them and how exciting. Yeah, I still feel excited just looking at them. So I hope that gave a good overview of what we do, why we exist. And I think now we'll turn it over to Hannah to share more about the specifics of some of the programs.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Hannah Murnen. As Karin said, I'm the MD, the Managing Director for Activate Anywhere. And I've been with Activate for about 1.5 years now. To launch Activate Anywhere. My background was I most recently was at a startup for the last 6 years as CTO, building a startup developing membranes for industrial gas separations. Before that, I was at McKinsey doing management consulting, so very far on the business side, although my background is in chemical engineering with a PhD in chemical engineering. So I spent a few years in management consulting, helping industrial companies on strategy and growth and operations before moving to the startup world, and then decided to join Activate when I'd kind of reached an inflection at my last company. Activate was a great way to give back to the community and get to live vicariously through all my fellows. Okay, so Activate Anywhere, you can go forward a slide, Karin. As Karin said, the basic premise behind Activate Anywhere was that there's talent all across our country, and recognizing that Activate has the potential to support fellows who are building their companies wherever they are is huge. And so our first cohort, which Austin is a member of, was launched in June of last year. And so you can see we have, these are the sort of squares of the fellows all over the, or triangles, I guess, fellows all over the country. So everywhere from Atlanta to upstate New York, like Austin, to Colorado, to Madison, Wisconsin, all over the map. And so these fellows, we've created a community where most of what we do is spend time with each other on Zoom like this. And then about once a quarter, we get together in person and spend some in-person time. You can go ahead and advance. And And so the makeup of the fellowship is exactly the same. And so all of the pieces that Karin talked about for our fellows are exactly the same, with the exception that they are based at their own facilities. And so you'll hear from Austin about what his experience is like at Cornell and the Praxis Center. But for all of our fellows, we work with them to find the right spot for them, whether that's within a, just a commercial lab space where they're able to rent facilities, or whether it's in a sort of user facility like some of the NNCI sites. Otherwise, it's exactly the same in terms of the community that we try and build, the education pieces we bring, the speakers we bring in, the financial support we provide. A little bit more of what that looks like on kind of a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. So we do a lot of work around professional development for our fellows. Some of this is bringing in collisions, is what we call them, where they're getting to interact with other founders or folks who have gone through similar journeys, or just people who have relevant, they might be a speaking coach or somebody to help them think about what their pitch deck looks like in terms of graphics, or how to think about their hiring strategy, a whole host of things. We lean pretty heavily on community connections. Austin and I were actually in Boston last week for the Anywhere quarterly trip together. And so a lot of that is just being able to bond with other folks going through the same thing. Entrepreneurship can be a pretty lonely path. And so thinking about how to connect our fellows to each other, to alumni, to other people in the ecosystem who could help them along their path, even if that's just commiserating about something that's not going well that week. We also, we have things like quarterly sort of simulated board meetings. Most of our fellows don't have boards yet. They're super early on. And so we help them set up what is similar to a board meeting to get ready for that process and think through what it's like to have to sort of step back and think about what your company is doing on a quarterly basis. And so those for Anywhere fellows take place on Zoom, but they bring in external advisors and then certainly activate mentors and staff in the process as well. And then, as I mentioned, we also have a retreat once a year. So in June, we're just coming up to our annual retreat, which we will have the newest set of fellows who are just starting this this June join us for that. And so super excited to see the next cohort of Anywhere fellows there. You can go ahead. So this is the Anywhere team. So myself as the managing director, Jeffrey's our fellowship manager who launched the program with me starting last year and really manages sort of all of the operations and support for the fellows. And then we brought on Evan as our fellowship associate, who does a lot of the logistics and like paperwork and sort of back end stuff that needs to happen. And so he just joined recently to help support with the second cohort for Activate Anywhere coming on board. And Austin can speak more to this from a personal experience. I think what's been really unique about Activate Anywhere is, as I said, the fellows can build their company from wherever they are. They can build at the lab space that makes the most sense for them. Also, if they have personal things that tie them to a particular place, that is great, and we support that and want to embrace that. We provide all of the mentorship and community virtually to help them connect with folks all across the country. So one of the things that I love is I can pull in basically anybody for our fellows because it's not limited by space. So I'm not trying to get an in-person meeting for them in the Berkeley office. It's asking folks to just jump on a Zoom and provide some guidance. And I think especially in this sort of, after living through much of COVID, many of us are very willing to engage virtually. And so that's been really helpful to see. And then, as I said, we meet in person for quarterly visits. So this past year, we went to the 3 Activate sites, New York, Boston, and Berkeley. Next year, we're planning to again be in New York for Climate Week in the fall, and then visit Houston, which will be the newest Activate site in kind of the early winter, late fall timing, still getting nailed down. And then the third one to be TBD. We'll see what our third quarterly visit is next year. But these visits are a chance for the fellows to connect with each other and then also to connect with the ecosystem of wherever we are. So for both Berkeley, Boston, and New York, it was great to get to meet a lot of the potential collaborators or investors or partners or folks who you might want to hire, just giving the fellows a chance to meet a lot of people who are in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and can support them in some part of their journey. The questions we get a lot about Activate Anywhere that I'll just answer now and see if other ones pop up for folks is, I live in blank, can I apply to Activate Anywhere? And our main restriction is that you can't be in one of our existing locations. So if you're within 50 miles of Berkeley, Boston, or New York, you should apply to the in-place community. If not, you should apply to Activate Anywhere. You do have to be US based to be able to work in the US. I always think it's a little bit of a misnomer that we say anywhere when really we mean anywhere within the United States. And then when we say within our materials, you'll see it says like you have to have a qualified host lab. Really, that just means you have to have a plan for the lab space or the physical space where you're going to be doing your company development. And you need to be in control of your IP generation. So it can't be, I'm just going to stay in my PI's lab and keep going and as like an extended postdoc. It has to be where you start to establish the company separately. And happy to talk through specific cases if people have questions about that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Karin, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, I have some slides on the our in residence, like the Berkeley, Boston, New York, and then soon to be Houston. But I actually think it'd be better to hear straight from Austin, and we can answer questions about, those in residence. The only difference from what Hannah said is that we have some established partnerships with some research facilities, like in Berkeley, it's with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. In New York, it's with Columbia University. In Boston, we actually have with a few labs, like with MIT, et cetera. So that's really the only difference, but I think would love to turn it over to Austin now to share more about his experience, his company, and all that's in between.
All right. Yeah, happy to, start sharing.
While we're transitioning to Austin's talk, we did have one question come in that would probably be good to answer right now. It's from a person who's developing a technology for biological sample prep. Is it correct that primarily the way that one would apply here would be based on their geographic location and not necessarily based on their technology domain? So if it's a biological sample prep technology and they're greater than 50 miles away from any of the existing sites, they could apply to Activate Anywhere. Is that right, Hannah?
Yeah, totally. And the only thing I'll add is, actually I'll add two things. One is on our website, which may be what you're referring to, is we have listed the industries that we, I forget what we call them, but that think we can have impact in. And so I think there's 8 of them. It's okay if your technology falls outside of those 8. Those are kind of to give a general idea of like the types of things that we think are sort of challenges facing the world. There are obviously many things outside those 8. And so I wouldn't stress too much about making sure that you fit exactly into one of these 8 buckets. The other piece I will say, though, is that Activate in general is mostly focused on non-healthcare or non-medical industrial applications. So if you have something, for example, that's like a new pharmaceutical therapeutic, we're probably not the best program for you. There are other programs that have better networks, better support, are just better structured for that type of endeavor. There are obviously always things that live in the gray area. So we support a lot of synthetic bio companies, often with industrial applications, whether it's for one from Cornell extracting rare earth elements out of waste using microbes, or agricultural applications. We've even supported some that have both medical and agriculture, or both medical and industrial applications. So there are some gray areas, but I would say things that are truly just a medical technology, we generally aren't the best fit for.
Great.
Again, happy to talk through any specifics. If you have like something that you think is in that gray area, just reach out.
I would encourage the folks who have these types of questions, feel free to reach out to the Activate folks. Maybe we can put your website in the chat. But yeah, I think there's probably going to be a lot of questions like that. Thank you, Hannah. And sorry, Austin.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so my name is Austin Hickman. I'm the CEO of Soctera and a current Activate Anywhere fellow in the 2022 cohort. And I just want to start by giving you a little bit of my background. So like many grad students, I think, who work in an NNCI facility, I was mostly just focused on the tech throughout grad school. So working specifically at the Cornell nanoscale facility, developing a amplifier technology that I'll talk a little bit more in the coming slides, but was doing that mostly. And it was towards the end of grad school that I started looking seriously at the applications of my technology and talking to people in industry, and realized that there were a couple of things happening and on the grand scale in the favor of this technology, like of course the CHIPS Act and the also that these types of amplifiers are really just starting to come to market. And so it seemed like a good time to explore commercialization of the technology I was developing as a graduate student, which led me to participate in a few entrepreneurship events on campus and eventually start Soctera. And so, I was mostly just doing this. I was a solo founder. I have a couple co-founders, but they're professors at Cornell. So I was doing this essentially on my own until recently. I was the only member of the company. And so I was really excited when I finally found out about Activate and the community that they offer, which ultimately led me to apply and become a member of the Activate Fellowship. And so I'll just briefly go through the tech that I'm developing, which is for wireless communication, which is everywhere in our lives, of course. And if you looked inside something like a 5G cell phone tower, you'd find a lot of these things called power amplifiers, which take the signal that we wish to communicate to a cell phone, for example, and gives that signal strength so that it can be transmitted and make it from the tower to your cell phone and still have enough strength to be received. And so, these amplifiers aren't just diagrams, but they're actually real fabricated devices. And so this image on the right is from my graduate work. It is a device that was fabricated in an NNCI facility, and the image is taken in the same facility, showing these transistors that make up the power amplifier. And so what we're doing that's unique is using aluminum nitride to keep these power amplifiers cooler when they operate at very high power, which enables longer distance communication that happens more efficiently. But like I said, I started this company coming from a background of technology and developing the tech as a grad student, but that is really just one aspect of trying to bring something to market, right? And there's so much more that goes into developing a business. How do you register your company within the state? How do you open a bank account? How do you pay yourself, right? Cover yourself with health insurance. All these basic things that, are the questions that run through your head when you're just getting started. And it's, super overwhelming. And one of the hardest things I think initially for me was seeing, I can see how everything happens in the lab. I have no idea how this is going to become a product that somebody would actually pay me for, right? And that is such a daunting idea of what is that path, right? And I just couldn't see it. And so it really takes a lot of mentorship and learning about the many other aspects of running a business. And that's where I think, coming from Cornell and the CNF here, I had a really good base to build this technology and showcase this technology. And now what I needed was working on these other aspects of running a business, right? And so that's where I think you have this great, at least for me in my experience, this very complementary effect of working in the CNF and then working with Activate. Is the CNF completely supports the development of my technology, and I'm really set up for success to continue improving it and showcasing and demonstrating what we need to moving forward. And then Activate is helping me with everything else, essentially with that comes with running a business. And every company is different, and so how much you need in terms of help for each of these things changes. And fortunately, with the Activate Anywhere community specifically, we've got people at all different levels within, each of these dots are something that I came up with off the top of my head, what it takes to run a business when I was making this slide. And there are so many other things. And fortunately for each one of these dots, somebody in Activate has done it and probably did it just like 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago, right? And you can go ask them, oh, how was that? How exactly did you negotiate that joint development agreement, right? So the community in Activate Anywhere covers so many different areas, and people are at so many different stages that while we're still able to all really, offer each other expertise and what it takes to develop a business. So, it's for me, I'm approaching, I guess, the halfway point of Activate. It's a little scary to think. I started this past August, but yeah, it's just been a fantastic experience, and I really can't recommend it enough. So yeah, with that, I think that's my last slide. So I will turn it back over.
Well, that's outstanding. Thank you, Austin. I loved the passwords on your slide down there.
It sneaks up on you, the number of passwords you have to keep track of.
Well, April 1, I sold a business, and just the handing off of passwords and that sort of thing. It's like you've got your own personal passwords to manage. So I'm curious to hear how Activate helps you with that.
Yeah.
I have a few questions here that I've shared, but before I proceed into those, I think David Gottfried of the NNCI has a couple. If David, if you'd like to ask yours now.
You can go ahead, and
Okay.
I'll ask mine at the end. There is
Cool.
another online question. I don't know if you see, Matt.
Oh, I did. That one just came up. So can international students apply? If so, do they use OPT during the fellowship?
So yes, international students can apply. You have to have the right to work in the US for the duration of the fellowship. So some students start on OPT, but generally have to have a path towards something else. So we can talk about specific situations, but we definitely have international folks who apply and end up as Activate fellows. And there's a sort of variety of strategies around how they make that work.
Excellent. All right, I'll move into a couple of questions that I had here. And there were more that came up during the conversation. So I'll go with the ones that I have shared with you previously and then move into these others. But in your time with Activate, what has surprised you the most about how our nation translates research to the market? And we'll just go around. If anyone wants to take that question first, feel free to do it. And if you don't feel like you have a response to it, don't feel like you have to answer it.
I can go first, I guess, since I'm already off mute. You know, I had worked obviously in commercializing technology before coming to Activate. And so I think now at Activate, having seen one, a lot of iterations on it, just because a lot of companies come through. And so seeing a bunch of different versions of it, but also sort of how Activate is funded and how we think about support for programs like Activate through the government. I think the thing that surprises me most, which maybe shouldn't surprise me, is just how distributed and uncoordinated it is at times. You know, like the fact that we're just doing this now with NNCI, or the fact that like any given fellow is trying to navigate different SBIRs and different granting agencies and different in-kind contributions and how to work with the national labs. And like, there's just a whole host of different types of organizations, all with very shared goals of like wanting to advance our nation's science competitiveness and help folks build companies. It's very difficult to navigate at times. And so for, I think that's the thing that surprised me the most, is there's no like governing way to think about all the different pieces that our government is trying to push forward.
I think that's a great response. Anything, Austin, you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add on top of that, from my own personal experience, I totally agree. You know, when I was there's really no blueprint, and I don't think there can be, especially for new technologies, right? Like my nitride based technology, it's like who fabs this stuff, who is going to help you, you know, commercialize this, what companies can you work with? There's no document that tells you that, and it's really just, there's so much that you have to kind of figure out on your own, and so having a community to kind of help, that helps you not reinvent the wheel for every little thing because other people have done it, is really helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, like Hannah said, there's no real like national like government agency that assists this. And so I think that's where, you know, these programs such as Activate and others have kind of taken up that role of, you know, regardless of what exactly you're developing, we can kind of push you along the path.
So let's see here. Karin, anything to add, or you're good with those? Okay.
They're the experts.
Awesome. So next question I had for the group is, and the more I've heard about Activate, the more I feel about this. It seems like a really ideal solution to the tech transfer challenges that we face. And as you laid out, the stipend and the access to R&D funds, and then additional capital as needed, which I imagine is tied to some success criteria potentially. It really gives you a nice critical mass of funding to get things going, because sometimes just covering that your salary is challenging enough. But it seems like a really ideal solution. And what I wanted to ask here just succinctly is can you share what you see as some of Activate's greatest strengths and also some of the greatest weaknesses or challenges that the program faces?
I could maybe try some of that. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think on the strength side, and I guess it's still an experiment, but I think it's a strength because I think it's one of our differentiators and why we're so unique is we put as much emphasis on the individual as we do on their technology. I think a lot of investments, both by government and the private sector, you see really being technology based. For good reason. That's like their mission areas. It makes sense. To what I was mentioning earlier, we believe technology is crucial, but the individuals are the difference makers. They're the ones that actually have to lead that technology development, make the hard, tough decisions. And so in our curriculum, we also work on soft skills, and we believe in like the community aspect. And honestly, if you enter our program as a fellow and you decide a year in that starting a company is actually not for you and you want to, join industry, go back to academia, that's a success story, because it's really about how you define your journey as an individual. And you can be an entrepreneur you can be an entrepreneur in academia, honestly. So I think that is one of our strengths because it is a uniqueness. And I think we, see the vast majority of our companies still successful, still active, because we really emphasize the individual aspect. Maybe on the areas to improve, I mean, this is maybe a cop-out answer, but I just wish we could support more. We have a very high touch model. It's 2 years, it's intimacy at scale, we try to call it, but we're only really able to bring on 40 to 50 innovators every year. And that's just scratching the surface of the demand, and I should say even supply of folks who don't have access to this opportunity and really could benefit from it. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we scale more cost effectively? Are there different ways that we can provide access to our resources and community in other ways? But yeah, that keeps me up at night. Hannah, Austin, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I'd say just along the lines of the strength, I'll echo the fact that the Activate Fellowship supports the individual. I just feel like it's so much more aligned, our interests and Activate's interests. They really in it to support us, whereas these other, I think, accelerators that take a piece of your company, well, they're no longer in it to support you. They're in it to sell the company for as much value as possible to get a return, right? And so that can put you guys, actually, you and that accelerator at odds, right? Depending on what you want to do and what you decide, if you need to pivot or change or something happens, right? So that's, feeling truly supported by Activate is really wonderful and pretty unique, I think. The other strength is, I already talked about the community, but, I think that we've even realized in the past year, the first year of Activate Anywhere, just how much of a strength that is. We have, like they mentioned, we have weekly programmings, and some of the ones that people have highlighted as their favorites or the most impactful were ones that were run by fellow Activate Anywhere fellows. And so, like, just a month or two ago, 2 of the fellows gave a seminar on hiring, and last fall, a fellow gave a talk on raising money, and just seeing it at that personal of a level where it's not a seminar where somebody's coming to explain this topic to you. It's like, here's how this happened for me. And, oh, this thing, that really sucked. Or this was the best part, right? And when you can get that level of intimacy, it's like, really, it's like, wow, I understand what you're telling me. And, you know, just this past week in Boston, I hired somebody in February, and I'm learning to be a boss for the first time. And so two of us, when we got breakfast, we were just chatting about like, yeah, I really realized I had no idea how to be in this position because I've never done it before. And just the three of us chatting about this new experience because we've all kind of gone through it in the past year, right? And those types of like soft interactions that you can't really quantify, I think are the best thing about Activate.
It's outstanding. Hannah, anything to add?
No, I mean, these guys covered the ones I was going to say. I guess on the strengths, which kind of goes along with like, you know, just being able to support the individual. I think one of the big strengths, which is harder to sort of put your finger on, but is we give people time. Like, you know, a lot of times when you're starting a new endeavor, you feel this like pressure to raise money, to start building, to start doing. And by having a 2-year fellowship where like, you know, you have a salary for those 2 years and some funds to start the company, it gives people time to be really thoughtful and deliberate in what they're starting and why and how they want to do it and what their goals are. And just giving people time, I think, is game changing. For some people, like they could never start in a new company if they didn't have that time where they know that they will be supported throughout it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest strengths. And then I echo Karin's in terms of our things we are still trying to figure out how to do better is supporting more fellows is hard, not just from like a fundraising perspective, which Karin lives and breathes by, but also it's very like personal. And so like, you know, it's very much how do we have the right people to be able to support more fellows? How do we have more managing directors? How do we scale our community in a way that doesn't lose some of the magic of all of those interactions that Austin was talking about?
That's exactly what I was going to ask Karin was what is that fundamental limitation? And I think you just hit the nail on the head. But you also mentioned supply, Karin, in your are you talking about the supply of people willing to participate in the program?
Yes, every year, this past year, we had 33% increase in applications. The year before was actually 65% because we introduced 2 new communities. There's 40,000 PhDs who graduate every year. Like, we know there's talent out there. It's just, can we help them learn about us and then us figure out our capacity, both financially and staff-wise, to give the best support to these folks?
And I see that we see that same challenge here at Virginia Tech. We see it in our NNCI network. We know the talent's there, the folks who are willing to step forward, and sometimes it's just a matter of awareness and understanding and knowing this is a career path and there's an opportunity for it. One of the things that I love about what Hannah just said about giving people time, I also think you give them some breathing room. And I think it addresses a real gap in terms of entrepreneurship participation from underrepresented groups and minorities, where you often see this bias toward predominantly white male entrepreneurs. And this tends to mirror some societal elements when it comes to resources and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing about Activate is it sort of balances the playing field a little bit, because you're stepping in and saying, look, you don't have to work a second job or something like that. This is going to cover you. You have the resources to start off on this journey. So I didn't necessarily get that until just now. And I really, that's something we struggle with in particular. It's not just about entrepreneurship in general, but it's also about how do we get groups to participate in innovation entrepreneurship who have not traditionally had the resources to do so or haven't felt like they could participate. So I appreciate that that unique element. Let's see. So my next question here relates, I guess this is a good segue. Each other, thanks to the Nano for Earth meeting. And I wanted to just ask each of you, what are some of the opportunities that you see to not only engage with the NNCI, but the broader nanotech community? And I think I might start with Austin. I might call you out on that one because you came out of an NNCI facility. What could we do better as the NNCI to help folks like you become more aware of the program and find the next Austin?
Yeah. Well, I think just like you said, raising awareness, because a lot of people just don't understand that this is a serious path and that it should be given serious consideration. I think a lot of people kind of laugh it off because it just seems so ridiculous to start a company when you haven't ever tried such a thing before. So, and it was really honestly like a program here in the College of Engineering, the Entrepreneurship Fellowship that, we took a couple classes, we did participate in NSFI core, like doing that made me realize, oh, there's actually a market out there for this. Oh, people do this. This is a legitimate option for me. And just, so getting that going, and I participated in that my third year. And so it was the gears started turning, right? And so by the time I was in my fifth year, it's like, all right, we're going to start this company. We're going to set it up. And that really helped me because I was able to apply for grants and kind of get things moving while still a student. So I didn't graduate. And this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that students face is it's like, when I graduate, am I going to have health insurance? Who's going to be paying me, right? And if you wait to start a company to when you're about to graduate, you're not going to have an answer to those questions, right? And I think, honestly, the transition period, so similar, Activate can obviously be a solution for this, but, largely, I think even universities and NNCI facilities can help, make people aware of the options and how to make that transition, because if you don't have any guidance, you're going to be stuck without pay and health insurance when you graduate. So you kind of have to be ready for that. But then, yeah, so, and then with the broader, I guess, ecosystem, obviously there's a lot of excitement right now with the CHIPS Act and the NSTC facility. And so, I mean, I think a lot of this, like in terms of what the NNCI can do, is just, it relates back to the awareness and having the, like, what a path to commercialization looks like for a semiconductor technology, for example, like what I'm doing. What are some of the next level facilities that someone can use? Because obviously, NNCI facilities are fantastic for research R&D purposes, but, I'm not going to be making 10,000 of these amplifiers off the line in NNCI because that's not their purpose, right? So, providing kind of just an idea of what types of facilities are available for that next level of production, right, of these things. So it's just a couple of ideas, I guess. So
yeah, I would like to say we'd like to help with that qualified host lab step and create a direct link between Activate and the NNCI.
Yeah,
at sites that are interested in being connected. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Austin.
Like we talked about at the beginning, the Valley of Death. Like, I think there's just such a great example in the semiconductor space, right? Because it's like you have the NNCI facilities, and then you have these foundries that are these massive companies, and they're going to look at a one-person company and be like, why would I ever interface with you? And there's just this gulf between the two. And if there are like go-between facilities, it's not clear what those are to people starting companies. And so it's really tough to see the path to actually commercializing a semiconductor technology without a lot of knowledge of the market space.
Any additions there from?
No, I was going to say basically the exact same thing, which is I think for so many of these Anywhere Fellows, finding the right facility, especially if they need specialized equipment, can be sort of time consuming. And so for the NNCI, who already has these sites set up, being able to set up some agreements so that it makes sense for fellows to be based there, I think makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, one of the fundamental concepts that we have within the NNCI is that as difficult as entrepreneurship is for any technology domain, it's uniquely difficult for nano because of we exist because these facilities don't exist in abundance. They're very expensive. They're difficult to maintain and require a lot of expertise to keep them operating. And so making those facilities available to entrepreneurs who want to take advantage of them is very important. But also, coupling that with limits in terms of people interested in entrepreneurship and the challenges of mentoring them effectively and at scale, like you folks are talking about, it's a real challenge. So, but exciting that we can work on that following this webinar. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. I'm seeing some questions getting answered in real time, and I don't want to, I'd like to make sure that at this point I pause. If there's any questions that want to be answered, we've got 7 minutes here. So I want to make sure that I don't talk through the whole thing. Is there anyone else who has questions? David, would you like to ask one of yours, or do you want me to keep rolling?
Sure. No, I will ask a question. So I saw, Karin, that you answered the question about the annual budget around $18 million per year. What's the source of that funding?
It's predominantly government, both federal and state, and philanthropy. So we're probably like 50-50 right now and looking to grow. So 18 is with 4 communities. We want to grow to 8 communities and 100 new fellows a year. That's our vision. That would be at least a $50 million organization. So
good luck with that. My other question is, and Austin, you mentioned I-Corps. What's the kind of the comparison between your program? Obviously, the magnitude of the funding is actually larger per fellow, but what's the kind of the comparison between the I-Corps program and kind of what your educational program is?
Yeah, you mean the difference between I-Corps and the Activate program?
Yes.
Yeah. So I-Corps is it's a 6-week, very intensive program where the purpose is solely customer discovery. So, you're trying to get out there, talk to people in the field, who uses these things, why do they use them, why do they care about them? So it's very focused on the product market fit, right? Like, who are you providing value for? And so I think it's a great thing to get started with, because it helps you determine why your technology is important for someone who is planning to use it, instead of just, oh, here's the cool metrics I'm able to produce, which is what we focus on as more so as grad students. And then for Activate, it's much more holistic than that. So there's definitely still customer discovery happening and a lot of connections being made that are useful for customer discovery. But, in addition to that, it's every other aspect of developing and growing a business, and which is not really the focus of I-Corps.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just add many Activate fellows do I-Corps either before joining Activate, like in the months when they're applying, or just before joining the program, or shortly after they join Activate. So in the first couple of months of Activate, they'll do I-Corps. It's really complementary because, as Austin said, it really zeroes in on that product market fit. How do you figure out what you're making and for who and why they need it or why they want it? And then it's sort of a great launching point for the rest of Activate.
I like the comments about the wellness of the entrepreneur. I find that to be a very to sort of address your comment as well, David. The wellness of the entrepreneur does not really come up in I-Corps. And I would offer that as a suggestion for the future for anyone who manages I-Corps who might watch this on YouTube. That it's very important, and I can imagine that Austin could back me up on that one. You find yourself in areas, just like you talked about before, you're having to do things you're not necessarily trained to do, but somebody has to do them, and you can't hire, you don't have the funds for that. So you become stressed. It can be a very lonely place to be. And so it sounds like Activate has a nice support network and understanding of what an entrepreneur goes through. So that's really encouraging to hear.
we actually have a monthly newsletter, and we are starting a series. We just released it last week on mental health and entrepreneurship specifically, because that is a growing, sadly, area of study, but also rightly. So yeah, we have some resources online, and please sign up to subscribe to our newsletter. There'll be 2 more articles coming out in the next couple months.
Outstanding. Let's see. So one question for Austin, and then I think I'm going to pass it back over to Karin for our
Call to action.
for our final call to action here. Austin, what would you be doing if you weren't doing Activate?
I'd still be trying. I think it would be a lot harder. And I'd probably be several months behind of what I'm doing right now. I think, I'm committed to this, so I would still be doing it. But yeah, I mean, just, like I said, I'd be inventing a few wheels that somebody else already showed me how to build. That's really what it is, somebody's done it before, somebody's gone through that. And when you have a good community, you can learn from each other and just accelerate so much that you need to do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
We jumped to Karin. It looks like somebody has their hand raised. I didn't know if we wanted to give them a quick chance. Yes.
I think that was Eve. I think he entered his question in the Q&A.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, good. And interestingly, our founder himself was a hard tech entrepreneur, and kind of had the same questions of there was no support for me, so that's why he created this program, because he would have been like Austin too without the program, like trying to figure it out, and he figured it out on his own, but with a lot of difficulty. So this is I would be remiss if I did not put this out here to close this off, but really, this is please apply to be the next Activate Fellow for cohort 2024. Of course, based at one of the National Nanotech Institutes. I think that would be just like a really wonderful, as we're seeing with Austin, collaboration. Just to give some timelines. So we're not officially in recruitment period, as we're still closing out cohort 2023 starting in June. But once they're on board in the month of June, that's when we hit the pavement with recruiting for next year's cohort. And you'll see, this timeline is an ish. This is sort of what it looks like. The summer months, we have webinars, how to write an application, talk to some of our fellows, et cetera, et cetera. Applications are going to open up in about the mid-September, late September time period through October 31st. That's usually our period. And then selection begins. So what can you do though now, because we're a little bit early? Please sign up for cohort 2024 updates. I'll send this also to Matt, so make sure folks have that sign up, but it's at activate.org/apply. We have more information in our fellowship page, our FAQ. You can look at our fellows and alums. And these are kind of 5 important points about what the application is going to be asking you. Your technical vision and pathway. How do you align with some of the mission areas and focus areas that we have? Who are your co-applicants? Or you can apply as a solo founder. That's totally okay. How can you benefit from the fellowship? Some of these questions we ask. And yeah, ways to prepare between now and then. Certainly talk to folks, do your market research. We also ask about techno-economic modeling, if that's even a new term. We have a whole module on our website where you can learn about what that is and how to do some of the back of the envelope. Just a lot of work that you can do during this time period to help prepare you, but would love to see folks apply, and apply at activate.org is the email if you have other questions, but would really love to collaborate with you all a lot more.
Well done. And we're right on time, right, David? So the final thing I would say to you, Karin, and Hannah in particular, if there's ways that we can help with we have a number of folks who are very entrepreneurially minded at the various sites that we have as part of the NNCI. I am one of those people. I would be very interested in how I can help amplify what you're doing at our site. And there may be others who would be interested in that as well, helping you with that. People who have the mindset of helping entrepreneurs along their pathway. So David, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say thank you to Austin, Hannah, and Karin, and Matt for moderating. And I know both Matt and I have the gears turning in our heads trying to figure out how we can help each other out. And we'll be doing that in the weeks and months ahead. Just thank you again, and to those who joined, thank you for joining. And we'll hopefully see you in 3 weeks at the next NNCI webinar. Remember, you can check the NNCI site, the events page for all upcoming webinars, and you can view recordings of all past webinars on our YouTube channel. And with that, I will say, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Take care.
Thank you.